Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here, talking about Hurricane Delta this morning. You know, it was 2 years ago today that I was getting ready for the big mission in Hurricane Michael. It was 3 years ago that we dealt with Hurricane Nate along the central Gulf Coast in Mississippi. And this year, 2020, we're going to be dealing with Hurricane Delta, making landfall tomorrow along the Louisiana coastline. More than likely, it's going to bring a pretty bad storm surge, a lot of wind damage across areas where Hurricane Laura impacted at the end of August this year. It's hurricane country. It might be sportsman's paradise down here in beautiful Louisiana, and it is a great area, both from the natural settings to the people that we've met. But, you know, you got to deal with hurricanes, and so here we are, October 8th, 2020. So here's the latest as to what's going on with the hurricane, getting better organized today, very well established outflow, a lot of what we call ascent or rising motion all through this region in here. So the air is going to have no problem going up and out in a clockwise fashion in the upper parts of the atmosphere, allowing Delta to really ramp up. I expect that this will get back to Category 4 intensity at some point. It is already back up to 100 miles per hour as it is, and the overall environment is generally favorable, just a little bit in the way of cooler water right up here next to the coastline, but that's really about it. Everything south of there, all this water down here that it'll be traversing is plenty warm. We've gone over that numerous times. No reason to keep hammering that point. The one thing that we are going to be looking for, and this will help us to understand and see very clearly how well organized this is, and that is whether or not this develops a clear eye. The clearer and warmer that the eye is, right in the middle there, the more organized, excuse me, and potentially intense that it's the air conditioning blowing on me. It's literally right above my head. Very dry in this room. I keep my room temperatures cold. Don't worry about me. I'm fine. When you cough these days, you got to explain it. I'm so over it. But it's the way it is. I actually got some sleep last night, so I feel really good today. But we do need to see if it develops a very warm and well-defined eye and how clean that eye is, because that'll give us an opportunity to see, quite literally, how intense this is. Because remember, the more round and perfect a weather system is on our planet, the more intense it usually is. Think about tornadoes, some of the strongest winter storms we've seen, where they wrap up and they're just very aesthetically pleasing to the eye. When you look at it, you see that there is symmetry, everything is well balanced, and it's in a perfect state, so to speak. And that's just nature. That's just the mathematics of it, the way the physics work. When something is that well organized, it's usually a sign of an intense storm. And so we'll be watching today to see if that eye does in fact clear out. That'll help us both from an intensity perspective, but also for my group, we're hoping to be able to launch a special weather balloon into the eye tomorrow at landfall up here along the Louisiana coast somewhere. We call it the HRV project, the Hurricane Research Balloon. It's a payload that's got a couple of GoPros on it and a high altitude weather computer that goes, it'll sample air pressure, temperature, humidity, and dew point all the way to the stratosphere. No problem at all. Can handle the extreme low temperatures, and everything is housed inside of a case, a military spec case. And we launched that via weather balloon, a gigantic weather balloon, and we've tested this for about 8 years. We launched it one time during Hurricane Nate, but that was at 1 o'clock in the morning 3 years ago. We want to do it in the daytime, so if this gets a clear eye, that would be really incredible to see. Even if the eye is starting to fill in, it would just be really amazing to be able to do this, capture some data from the surface of the Earth all the way to the stratosphere. I will talk about this a little bit more, actually a lot more, tomorrow. But that's something that we're going to be looking for ourselves in terms of the organization of this system. If it has a clear eye, that could really be spectacular to capture the video from above in the stratosphere, and of course the data, almost like a sounding from the surface up. It samples every 6 seconds. So we'll talk about that more later. So the forecast track here, this is from our tracking chart. on the HurricaneTrack Insider site. You see what's happening. It's going to turn eventually up here and make landfall in southwest Louisiana sometime tomorrow, probably as a Category 2. You never know. It could be stronger than that. It could be weaker than that. But this gives you an idea of where the center of circulation is forecast to make landfall, somewhere out here in the Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge, which, I guess if you had to choose any place, might as well do it there because there's not too many people that live there. I guess the wildlife isn't going to be too happy about it, but what can you do, right? But it's the areas to the right, to the east, all through here, that are going to see a fairly substantial storm surge because of that onshore flow, the shape of the coastline, etc. Even areas all the way around the rest of Louisiana, including parts of Lake Pontchartrain and into Mississippi, will see some storm surge. Depending on the size of the wind field and the setup, it's hard to know exactly, but just be prepared for that storm surge along the coast. You know this by now. I'm just reminding you. But also remember, too, this will be an inland impact event as well, and the areas inland all the way up towards Alexandria and really to the points east, even Baton Rouge. This is going to be a larger hurricane, I mean it already is, than Laura. So do not be comparing this to Laura. Laura had a smaller core, smaller hurricane overall. This hurricane, I think, is going to grow in size just a little bit more, and the wind field is going to expand. I'm going to do an update tonight, another video discussion tonight, and we're going to look at that wind field, and we're going to talk about the effects that you can expect when the tropical storm force winds should arrive, when the hurricane force winds should arrive. We're going to go over all of that tonight because we will be within the 24-hour window of landfall, and we'll have a lot more information on that at that time. All right? So the storm surge, again, just kind of reiterating this. Yes, even down towards Port O'Connor, because of the large size of this, it'll be sending wave action and other energy into the water. That wind energy gets literally input into the water, and it translates to the north and west, and it'll end up along the coastline over here. We actually have a live permanent camera over in Freeport, thanks to Wendy and Michael that host that for us. And you'll probably see that on the Weather Channel from time to time. And of course, it's in our HurricaneTrack Insider on the tracking map. It's on the dashboard, all of that through our Patreon HurricaneTrack Insider Cooperative. But elsewhere, the storm surge, lesser amounts than we, which is good, 2 to 4 feet, not too bad. I mean, you can handle that. It's common sense, right? You just avoid it. But once you get east of Cameron, it starts to become life-threatening. I'm 5'8". I don't know anybody that's 7 feet, and at least personally, and nobody that's 11 feet. So Vermilion Bay, I think Sycamore Point, and all the way over towards Port Fourchon, you've got to be on top of this, that you get out of there. You know this. Again, you are Louisianans, right? Whatever you call yourselves, Cajuns. You are from Louisiana. You know this stuff. You should. It's not pleasant, right? We know that. It's not fun. Of course not. It's very disruptive. It can be deadly. But you know what to do. I'm counting on you here. I know it might be tiring. It's getting late in the year. We've been through this a lot. But you got to get out of the way of that storm surge. Don't try to second guess it. Go to a friend's house if you can't afford a hotel. Maybe the hotels are packed. Just get away. Get away from that 7 to 11 foot surge. You run from the water and you hide from the wind. You hunker down from that wind. And speaking of wind, seriously, if you're in a home that's surrounded by a lot of trees, especially pine trees, get out of there. Go to somebody else's house that's maybe farther inland. And if you can find a hotel, especially inland away, maybe up near Alexandria, as far away as Shreveport, or east. I know that it's busy this weekend in Mississippi with the cruising the coast, so hotels are going to be hard to come by. But the bottom line, we got to keep you alive. That's my #1 goal. And to do so, you got to heed this, the science here. And this is not exact, by the way. Knowing exactly what the surge is going to be is impossible. The track, the shape of the coastline, the speed of the hurricane, the exact angle that it comes in, the tide cycle, which, is not too much down on the Gulf, You do get low and high tides, but it's not as pronounced as the east coast of the U.S. But seriously, take it seriously. It's for real, and it's coming. All right, we got a little over 24 hours to go, and Laura's going to be roaring in. Now, the good thing is, if you want to call it that, I think this is good in one regard. We have pretty remarkable agreement on the track. So, you know, we don't have, like with Sally, when it moves slower, you had much more divergence in the track. Here, it's pretty clustered across the region of potential landfall, and so it's narrowed down across a fairly small area. And one thing that's very important about this, I'm going to zoom in here, it keeps it, at least the clustered guidance, all of it, generally speaking, except for this one on the left side over here. We can zoom back out and see what this purple one is. Generally speaking, it stays away the core from that area right there. Holly Beach, Cameron, and Lake Charles, where the worst of Laura came through. Sulphur, Hackberry, all that area. All right, we don't want this near there. That's just, and I know you could argue, well, at least there the damage is already done. I call BS. Those people don't need that. I mean, I get it. You can say, well, it's already messed up. At least it wouldn't. No. It doesn't work like that. You know, because those people are vulnerable. Structures are vulnerable. I mean, I get it, kind of taking one for the team. I remember some people in Mississippi when Rita was coming through. They were like, you know, bring it up here. We've already been annihilated after Katrina, you know, and I understood that. But, man, you don't need it, especially when thousands of houses have blue tarps on it. You've probably seen that picture on social media. But the bottom line, the guidance is generally clustered. The black line right in here is basically your official. That's the forecast, OFCL. And it does make landfall here, at least in the guidance and the official track, east of the area where Laura made landfall, over in the wildlife refuge there, the Rockefeller Wildlife Refuge. And we can see this reflected as well on the GFS. This is the Global Forecast System. This is the 6Z run from this morning. And we can see that this comes in about the same area. And so right up here, that's the Calcasieu Lake, or Calcasieu, however you say it, and Lake Charles right up in there. And so watch what happens here as we put this into motion frame by frame. You go throughout the day. Thursday, very well organized. And I see this right there. I think this is definitely going to get stronger over the next 24 hours and maybe even 30 hours. Then it'll start to come down a little bit. Should have a very well-defined eye. And remember, right there, right down there is Cameron, Louisiana, right there, that little black dot, and Lake Charles to the north of there, slightly to the north and east, and the GFS here, the 6Z run, brings this in east of there, you know, by a pretty good margin. But what's great for them is not so great, obviously, for these areas over to the east, including the Vermilion Bay, Abbeville, hopefully that's how you pronounce that. You never know in Louisiana. New Iberia, Lafayette, you know, Sycamore Point, Kaplan, you name it. Those areas in the right front quadrant, onshore flow, it's not going to be good. This is going to be a big, powerful hurricane, and it's going to hit a larger area than Laura did. The Euro, same general idea, and let me make this a little easier to see this time. All right, so this is the area right through here where Laura came in. We'll just kind of draw blue over it. That's where Laura really had the worst impacts. So the European model last night, the ECMWF, this is every 24 hours. It deepens it down pretty substantially as well with the structure and everything. That's just a formidable hurricane in the model. And then finally, at 24 hours, it too, the core just east of where Laura made landfall. And you can see what's happening. It's coming around the backside of this ridge of high pressure over here. And so this is really, this last 40 hours or so makes all the difference. If this ridge contracts, expands, shifts, every mile literally is going to count on the earth, you know, the statute miles where this thing's going to come in. And in the atmosphere, every meter is going to count. Now we're getting into meteorology here, but you measure these in what are called thickness, and how thick that ridge is, and it's literally, well, close to literally, the atmosphere is fluid dynamics, right? So think of it as a very large balloon, this big ridge of high pressure here. But it's not an air balloon, just like air, right? It's water. It's liquid, because the atmosphere is kind of a fluid. So this is like a big water balloon. And this is a smaller water balloon. This water balloon is more dense, let's say. All right? If you can visualize that. And these two interact with each other. They bounce off of each other. It's not a solid embedded in a liquid like a piece of wood in a stream. That's not the case. The atmosphere is fluid, all of it. There is no solid unless it snows or sleets, but that's something different. All right? So this is like a big balloon. And if it expands or contracts, it affects the steering of this, and it's doing it all the time. What's weird in our human world is we're looking at things in these increments of time. You know, we can go through, say, well, there's 24, 24, whatever. And it goes around the ridge, etc. It's happening right now, and right now, and right now. Everything's always changing, and it's moving and breathing, and it's amazing how it does so. But what we see is, like in the Euro here, about every 24 hours, and you see that ridge there, we can't know when it's going to deflate just a little bit, and it ends up that delta comes in 5 miles more to the east. You understand? It's so complex that we cannot narrow it down to the hour, every hour. The hurricane models do a pretty good job with that overall, like the HWHRF, etc. And I do want to show you that real quick from this morning's run, and kind of give you an idea of what it's thinking, almost literally. They're starting to get that way. That's the same area. That's a wild-looking picture, isn't it? That is the 850 millibar area. Let's go down here. Let's look at the 5,000 foot wind and the mean. Let's see, which one of these do I want to? Let's do this one. So this one is the mean sea level pressure and the 10-meter wind. That is the wind at about 35 feet or so above the ground. So this is 18 hours out. This is valid tonight, right around sunset. And the HWHRF, which is Hurricane Weather Research Forecast Model, is specifically designed for hurricanes. All right? The Euro, the GFS, the Canadian, and all the other models we see are global models. And they are deterministic models, and they have ensembles, of course. But this model and the HMON, another hurricane model, there's so many models, this one is specifically for hurricanes, all right? And we do get to see this in a much finer resolution. And in this case, I believe it's every 3 hours, all right? So I guess let's just back it up, shall we? Let's go to the beginning. So here's our initial starting point, 970 millibars. It's depicting a cleaner eye than exists right now, but overall, the HWHRF from the 6Z run is pretty on top of it. So we go out into time, and it drops down to 962, which will be valid around, well, here we go at 12Z. This is about right now, roughly. And it shows about 960 or so. And so we can go to the Hurricane Center homepage real quick, and let's go check on the pressure. The HWHRF was showing 960, and right now it's around 970. I think that says 960 in there. Is it, or is that? Yeah, that's 960. So it's about 10 millibars too intense in the HWHRF, for what it's worth. Anyway, it drops down to 953 by this afternoon, and it starts to really deepen at this point. As you can see, 945. So let's just pretend that it's about 10 millibars too strong. You know, the pressure is 10 millibars too low. That's what it is right now. We can't assume that's going to stay the case. But okay, let's say it's not 945, but it's 955 tomorrow at 1 a.m. Central Time. Well, that's still pretty intense. Come on. All right? You know, we can't split hairs here. You know, strong is strong. It's going to be a formidable hurricane. But you see the wind field very well defined, a very well defined eye. It starts to weaken as it encounters the cooler water, and then it makes landfall here in the late afternoon, very early evening tomorrow, which would be fine with me if it's daytime. And this is even further to the, or farther, how do you say it? Farther to the east. So here is Lake Charles is right up here in this vicinity, and you have Cameron, Louisiana, right there. And the whole area where Laura affected, generally what we call the blast zone, is through there. And that's literally what it looks like. If you haven't seen it, it looks like a big bomb went off. It's just terrible. So this would be to the east of there, which is good. But this is very important, folks. This onshore flow in here, that's bad. And it is just going to funnel the water into places like Vermilion Bay. That's the hurricane force winds there in the purple. Off to the right or to the east a little bit farther, you have Morgan City sitting over here, and this desk, I forgot my mouse pad, and it's hard to draw sometimes. But this onshore flow all across this area, you can just see the wind barbs and just follow it all. Everything's onshore, you know, and it's just going to pile that water up big time. And then you're going to have this wind damage all through here. A very large hurricane. Well, not very. I don't want to. It's larger than Laura, definitely. So please keep that in mind, all right? So one last thing before I let you go, just to reiterate where we're talking about in terms of the impacts here. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day. What are the impacts going to be? Well, we know that landfall is going to happen somewhere down in this vicinity through here somewhere. That's where the landfall will be for the core. Areas to the east, Vermilion Bay, Sycamore Point, etc. There's New Iberia, Abbeville, up through Lafayette. Lafayette's a pretty good-sized town. They're going to get rocked by this, no doubt about it. This comes in across this area, whatever the track is, whatever the trajectory. You folks in Lafayette, my friend Rob Perillo there, he's a good guy. His family's been through a lot, too. Remember that flooding you had in 2016? Anyhow, a lot of good people through here. You're going to get, you know, the Highway 90 corridor. I know there's some small towns, but you folks are in for it, all right? It's coming. And you need to be ready for an extended time of power outages. Make sure your oxygen tanks, if you're on them, are, you know, you got a plan for that. Make sure you're taking care of people that need it. You know, they might be sick, they might be disabled in some way. They're just not on their game. You can't ignore this. It's going to be a big wind event. Trees down, power out for a while. You know, the crews that are going to come in are going to help, but they're tired too. They've been through all of this as well. They're still working on Sally. They're probably still working on some Laura stuff. You know, it's just the way it goes. I'm trying to paint the reality here without being too doom and gloom. It's going to be a nasty event for our good friends in Louisiana. No way around it, unfortunately. I mean, the one saving grace that I will say, at least it's not a month ago where water temperatures were still on their peak, or we'd be looking at, I mean, it's not, so let's just don't even go there. We saw what happened. It's called Laura. All right, and that was the end of August, of course. The team and I are getting ready to head out. Within the hour or so, we're going to have the live vehicle cam running. That is publicly available on my YouTube channel. And it's also going to be streamed on Facebook Live as well. You can also access everything that we do, all of these remote cameras, the chat, that super duper tracking map that we've got, the digital dashboard. That is all accessible through our crowd-funded science project, the Hurricane Landfall Project, through Patreon. Patreon.com/HurricaneTrack. I will go over it in more detail tomorrow once we have everything running so I can show you, showing is, seeing is believing. But that's how you can get involved. It helps to fund what we do. But beyond the funding, it's really an amazing interface that we've got. And, it benefits you. It shows you what's happening. We got to pay for it somehow. And that's how we do it. It's called crowdfunding. And in fact, this graphic is produced by one of our patrons, Kari, over in the UK. And there's so much that goes on behind the scenes from you guys that are volunteering. You wouldn't even believe it. I need to win the lottery so that I can repay everybody. It's just a great group. All right, I'm done. Let me get this uploaded. We'll be out and about. We'll be streaming live. We'll talk to you from there. We'll get Jack Sillen to pop in, our good buddy Jack, to give you an update later today as well. All right? Thanks as always for tuning in. I do appreciate it. Hang in there, Louisiana. You've been through it before. You can go through it again. You'll be stronger on the other side, I promise. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. I'll talk to you once we're out on the Hurricane Highway.